Be careful what you ask for.
Oh! Okay. All right. This is going to be fun.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much. I know. I just put lip gloss on for the first time since COVID or since quarantine. And I also, my shirt has stars on it. I think I was like inspired.
Oh, appropriate.
Stars.
Yes.
I know. Yes. Well, thank you so much, Ted and Jason, for coming on the show today. We have so much to talk about. I don't even know where to start, but I think one thing that I was really inspired by was your relationship story. I just think it's so cute. You both, you've been together for over 20 years and you met in beauty school in Minneapolis. You guys tell me the story because I've done some creeping on it, but I don't want to butcher it. So how did you guys meet? I was just going to say,
you really did your research there.
I did my research. So you guys tell me, how did you meet? Like, was it love at first sight? How did you guys come together?
Well, I guess you should start, Jason, because, you know, you're going to lie.
See, I should start because otherwise this whole thing will be built on fabrications. Well, I, after going to college for a bunch of years and deciding that I was not successful in that learning style, I wanted to do something different. So I took the advice of a good friend to go to beauty school, and I registered at the Horst Education Center for Fashion, Beauty, Wellness, and Art, which is now the Aveda Institute. And Ted was one of my instructors. And from like the moment that I saw him, you know, he at the time weighed 195 pounds and was like shredded, and the kind of guy that would like carry a gallon of water around everywhere he went. And he had dreadlocks to here with blonde tips on them. Didn't they have blonde tips on them? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I was kind of captivated. So one of my girlfriends in the class was sort of like egging me on to like talk to him. So that's kind of where my crush started.
Was it mutual, Ted? Did you feel the same way?
Well, I had a crush. He was obsessed.
Oh, I was obsessed. But you know, the thing that's really interesting about that is that I never really fraternized, I guess, with students because I was his teacher. And I remember seeing him in the hallways, and I would think, who's that freak? You know, because at that time he only had a goatee. He didn't have a full beard. He had a goatee that was bright red. His eyebrows were bright red. His hair was bright red. And he was, you know, dressing up in costumes and stuff when he came to school. And I was like,
me and my friends were as club kid as you could be in Minneapolis.
I was going to say, and this isn't in Minneapolis. I grew up in the Midwest, so I know it's like, you know, it's definitely different. And how, Ted, did you grow up in Minneapolis or did you end up moving there?
No, well, I ended up moving there because I grew up in a military family. My dad was in the Army. And so we would travel every 3 or 4 years and go to new places. And I'm an only child. So moving and making new friends and then leaving those friends and making new friends when we move somewhere else, I really think helped me to adjust to life in a certain kind of way and helped me to easily adapt to different things. And when I moved from, I grew up in Texas because that was the place I had lived the longest besides New York. And then I moved from Austin, Texas to Minneapolis to work for the Horst Education Center. And that's how I met. Actually, the class that I taught was in the middle of the program. So again, I would see Jason walking around the school and thinking kind of weirdo, who's this weirdo? And then when he got into my class, he ended up walking out of my class twice because he has kind of like, you know, problems.
Authority issues.
Figures. And
so you guys clashed.
Yeah,
you guys clashed.
Well, Ted was teaching the segment for textured hair in beauty school. So it was like a 4-week, I think, or 3-week section on learning how to work with different textures of hair.
Yeah. And
Ted always, from then until now, always talks about it's not about ethnicity, it's about texture.
It's so true.
Yeah, he'll say, you know, Deborah Messing has very kinky wiry, coarse hair, while Lupita Nyong'o has very soft, soft hair.
Fine hair.
Well, I'm
Fine
sure
hair,
you
yeah.
guys can tell I have curly hair. I straightened it, but you can see like the curl frizzes in the background.
I love it.
Yeah. So, but growing up in Kansas, no one knew how to do my hair. I mean, they tried to relax it. I had really beautiful tight curls, but they're like, people were like, oh, we have to relax it, or we have to do a perm. Like they didn't know how to like nourish my hair, or like, know how to treat it. So, I've had my own painful curl journey, but
Yeah.
As a
And
side note to that,
yeah,
oh,
I was going
sorry.
to say, and I don't think that you're by yourself. There are a lot of women who have that struggle with their hair. Even when they have great hair, they don't think they have great hair, which is good for us because we can help them
yeah,
feel
Love
better
their
about
hair.
themselves. Yeah, love their hair.
exactly.
Well, so Ted, it's about the texture. It's not about the skin color. It's about the texture. It's not about over and over and over.
Yeah.
And one day he said, everyone is required to find a black model to practice this technique on. And I was like, well, if it's about the texture of the hair and not the color of the skin, why can't I just bring in a super curly haired white girl? And that was probably our first conversation about race in our relationship. Now that I think about it. And Ted's point, I don't know if he ever said it to the class, but he knew that most of those people would leave that school and never do textured hair, or maybe never work with a black person. And so from his perspective, it was an opportunity to make sure that he was, showing some people diversity that are from a pretty homogenized community.
Right, because everyone was from the Minnesota, Minneapolis area.
Yeah, pretty much. And, there aren't very many black people there.
No, yeah.
Well, we obviously know what happens in Minneapolis these days, but which is heartbreaking, but that's a whole nother situation.
We'll get into that later.
Okay.
But
all right.
So so you guys, had your tiff in class, but how did you finally be like, okay, let's date? Who asked, did you ask each other out at the same time? Who came on to who first?
Well, he came on
Ted
to
asked
me
me.
first. I was so hot.
We don't remember. I always say that Ted asked me, and Ted always says that I asked him. So
yeah, and because what was happening, I was actually going from the Horst Education Center to be a global educator for the Aveda Corporation, which was pretty much owned all by the same, of course, Horst Rechelbacher, who was kind of one of my mentors, owned Aveda and owned the school. So I was leaving that position and going as a global educator. And as I moved that to my next position is when Jason and I went out on our first date. And I remember it so vividly because I remember him giving me a piece of paper with his sister's phone number on it, because he was staying at his sister's house.
I was house
sitting for his sister. And I remember the piece of paper where he gave me the phone number. And as he gave me the phone number, I remember calling him on the phone and talking to him, but I don't remember what was said. And then we went out on a date. And for me, those moments of a relationship are really defined, I think, sometimes in the very, very, very beginning. And the thing that was really interesting was that, as a teacher and as a leader, it crosses not only in my professional life, but also my personal life. So I wanted to educate Jason on one of my favorite movies of all time, which is Mahogany with Diana Ross. And Jason had never seen it before. I don't even know if he had ever heard of it before, but there's just these moments in this movie that I think are kind of poignant to who I am as a person and why I loved fashion and why I love beauty so much, because there are so many fashion moments that happen, but also love moments. There's one in particular, if you've never seen the movie, where Diana Ross becomes this famous supermodel called Mahogany. And as she becomes Mahogany, she goes to Italy and she's doing her own fashion show and all of these really incredible things. And her boyfriend, who
Billy
lives
D.
back in the
Williams.
States in Chicago, Billy D. Williams, comes to visit her on a surprise. She didn't think she was ever going to see him again. And as he shows up, he drops a whole bunch of coins into her mail slot, and she's like, "Oh my God, what's that?" And it's him. And they get in a big fight because he can't relate to who she wants to be as Mahogany. And he tells her in the movie that if you, oh my God, am I gonna lose it? If you have success and you have no one to share it with, then it's really not success.
Yeah. That hits hard.
It does.
Yeah.
So he understood that. And he stayed the night after we watched Mahogany, and we went to breakfast the next morning, and he told me that I'm going to be his boyfriend, or that I am his boyfriend. And I was like, no, it's not that easy.
But it
And
was.
I said, okay, well, you can introduce me to your friends however you want to, but I'm introducing you to my friends as my boyfriend.
Wow.
And that's kind of
It was
How
a
it
done
happened.
deal.
It
yeah.
was a done
And
deal.
you guys, you eventually got married, and was it hard, especially being in Minnesota, being in an interracial gay relationship? Like, did you get, even back then, a lot of kind of flack or looks or weird questions around that?
I don't remember any. I think we
I
got
don't
more
really
weird
either.
questions when we said we were going to get married.
Mhm.
You know, like that was 1995,
Yeah, 6.
1996.
Mhm.
And gay marriage was really, really foreign. And so we got a lot of questions then about like,
Because it
what are you
wasn't gay
doing that
marriage.
for? Right. There
It's
was like
called
civil unions.
Civil union, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we got a lot of reaction from people then. But, you know, there were definitely moments. Like one time, Ted came to my hometown in northern Minnesota, and my mom said to her girlfriends, go ahead, touch his hair. You know?
Oh, yeah.
And so there's like learns like that.
Microaggressions, kind
Yes.
of, yeah.
Yes. So
Yeah.
there's been, there were things like that, but nothing that was really, you know,
Outward, like outright, kind of,
totally.
yeah.
And
Well,
from
that's
day one, when Ted met my family, it was like a non-issue. I think once my parents kind of came to terms with me being gay, then the next thing was me being happy, you know,
right.
and we've never had a discussion. I mean, obviously we've had discussions about race, but it was never about my relationship.
Relationship. Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was 26 years ago.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
beautiful.
I don't look old enough, I know.
I know
No, I mean, you
I know.
both look, I'm like, I want to see pictures of when you guys were young. You were in a costume, you had your shredded six pack. You guys look great. So obviously that is like the beginning. For those of you, Ted, I have to admit, I remember coming home from middle school and watching you on What Not to Wear.
Oh, really?
And I sometimes would get so bored. I mean, I loved Stacey London, but I would get so bored, but I'd always wait till the end to see what
Oh,
you would do.
really? Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
So how did you land, where did your career, or both of your careers, did you guys always work together, or how did you guys evolve into like this household name?
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I always wanted to be famous. It was always something that I kind of always remember. And when um, well, there's so much there. It's hard for me to say it all. There's so much. Jason, I mean, the first salon was kind of like the place where we're starring as our fourth salon, but we've had 3 salons previously. And the mother at the time was the Fifth Avenue Salon in New York City. And the thing about the Fifth Avenue Salon in New York City was we've always been kind of rebels and have thought outside of the box and think of things a little bit different. Like when we opened the salon in 2003, all of those salons that were famous salons were 50 plus chairs and huge behemoths of salons, and, you know, like a factory. And we were really inspired by the boutique hotels, like the W Hotel that just opened
Yeah.
up. There was these really kind of fabulous new ideas on what hospitality was. And the boutique hotels were kind of the start of that in hospitality. So we were really inspired by that. So when we opened Ted Gibson on Fifth Avenue, it was only 12 chairs in the beginning. And it was in the Flatiron building. And most people would think that a luxury upscale salon was uptown. So it was where
Right.
the Fakais and the Oscar Blondies and the Serge Romonts and the Sally Hershbergers and all those people were up there. We weren't up there. We came to a place where it was completely different. And it worked for us. And the reason why we decided to open a salon in the beginning was because I had built this really great reputation in the fashion business, and which turned into celebrity. And we thought we should really capitalize on that, because it really would make sense that we would open a salon and then develop a product and create this really incredible brand, Ted Gibson. And that first kind of moment was because of a celebrity. It really was.
Who was your first celebrity client?
Well, I would say that she wasn't the first, but she was the one that really
Opened that door, or like
yeah,
changed the
opened that door.
trajectory.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it sure did. And what had happened was I had was doing a lot of editorial for all the major publications, you know, Harper's Bazaar and 17 and Cosmo and all the magazines that we know today. And Marie Claire, I was doing covers for Marie Claire and fashion editorial. And Lucy Sykes, was the fashion director at the time, came to me and said, Ted, you know, I have this really great opportunity that I think you should do. And I said, okay, what is it? She goes, that's a celebrity. And I said, I don't want to do celebrities, because if you were a celebrity hairdresser, you lived in Los Angeles and you weren't very good. But if you were, it's true. And if
Yeah.
you were
Yeah, back then celebrity hair looked like
Yeah.
prom hair.
doodle
you know?
turds, you know,
Yep.
doodle turds, you know. So yeah, we get
Yeah,
that.
I
right?
remember that.
Yeah, we remember that. So as she said that I should do it, I was like, I don't want to do it. I'm a fashion hairdresser. I do shows in Europe. I do London, Milan, Paris, and couture, and I do shows in New York. And you know, fashion. That's what it is. It's like in Devil Wears Prada, where Marisa
Yeah.
Priestley talks about how the Serenian blue, how it trickles down to that. That's exactly what it was like. So she said, you really, really have to do it. And I said, okay, well, why? She goes, well, because I think it's really going to change your career. And it's one of those moments where, you know, I think all of us, and those of you who are listening, know that we can be a little bit of afraid or taking that leap. And
Or we know what our vision is.
yeah,
We know what the goal is, and we're afraid to like have the
Move
possibility
towards that goal. Yeah.
mhm.
yeah.
Or even veer off of it, because this may be the right lane. There's a great song called Watershed by Indigo Girls, and if you've never heard it, listen to it, because it's really powerful. And they talk about these two roads, of taking the right road. So at that moment I said, I gave in. And why I gave in, because she really encouraged me that I should do it. And what it was two covers. It was a Marie Claire cover in the morning, a Cosmo cover in the afternoon, and Patrick Demarchelier was shooting it, and it was Angelina Jolie.
Ah.
And everyone wanted to know, after that moment of me doing those covers with her, who was doing Angie's hair. So all that big sexy hair of the early 2000s, I did. I did covers, press, editorial, and it really changed
So
my
you were the
trajectory.
magic wand behind the big hair.
Well, you know, I think that every woman has moments in her life.
Yeah.
And I think that hair is the defining moment for women. And if you ask a woman what it is, if you look at a picture and it's 5 years old, and she'll say, oh my God, I remember this moment because my hair was this. Or
Yeah.
10 years from that, oh, I remember this moment, oh my God, my hair was that. And I think that women have different moments of their life. And I was in this
Even
moment.
today, it started with your comment about I had
Yeah.
curly hair then, and people didn't know how to, you know.
It's
Yeah.
well,
everyone-
hair is like, it's so emotional and ingrained. Like if you have a bad, women will remember bad hair days for like until they're like in the grave. You know, it's like
True.
they.
It's true.
Yeah. And so you became, you know, that kind of changed your trajectory. And then
Yes.
did TLC come to you then to?
Yeah, it was after that. So it was Angelina, it was Deborah Messing, it was Lupita Nyong'o, it was Zoe Saldana, it was Jessica Chastain, it was Annie Hathaway, and the list goes on and on and on. Gabrielle Union, it was just, you know, it was a really kind of special thing, because I cultivated these really amazing actresses in my arsenal of work. And when it came to the show, What Not to Wear, I remember my publicist saying, Ted, TLC wants you to come in. I'm like, what? And she goes, yeah, they want you to come in to audition for the show. And I'm like, that's that other guy's show. And I've seen that show. I don't know if I want to be on that show, you know? So I went in for the audition, and they said immediately, pretty much, said, you have the job if you want it. And my agent negotiated it. And it was one of those things that were really incredible. I loved doing that show. And I think what that show, What Not to Wear, really helped me discover as a hairdresser is that it didn't matter if she was Black or she was white or she was Asian, if she was skinny, she was fat, if she was short, or she was tall. It didn't matter, that all women have the same thing. And I tell all my straight friends this, my straight guy friends, I'm like, look, if you want to be golden in your girlfriend's or your wife's eyes, there's just 3 things you need to do. And those 3 things are, one is you need to listen to her, right? The second thing is you want to make sure that you tell her that she's beautiful, right? Very easy, very easy. And the third thing I just forgot, but 2 things especially.
Okay, well, there you go.
The 2 things
Yeah.
especially, you know what I mean? Those 2 things, you will be golden in your girlfriend or your wife's eyes.
And when did What Not to Wear end?
Let's see, 7 years ago.
Okay, so like 2013.
Maybe. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I was on it for 5 years.
Yeah. And after that, is that when you kind of started to grow the other salons?
No, they were gone. They were on before that, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they were on before that. We had one in Washington, D.C. in Chevy Chase, which was 28 chairs and 7 or 8 treatment rooms. And Jason would go back and forth from New York to D.C. all the time. And then we had another one in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, at the W Hotel. That one was 12 chairs and 40 employees. It was all 3 salons were these major salons.
And Jason, you've always worked kind of on the back end operational side of things?
Yeah, so when we first moved to New York, I worked for Aveda, and I was a haircutting educator for them, and I helped write haircutting curriculum and test product and all of that kind of stuff. And when it was time for me, I actually interviewed for a creative director position that I didn't get, and I took it very personally and decided that I wanted to leave the company. And that's when Ted was becoming very well known as Angie's hairdresser, and there was all of this momentum around that. And that's kind of how we decided, like, I could go work in another salon for somebody else and be in the same situation, or we could create this new thing together,
right,
and really try and do something special and different. And so the timing was really good for both of us. And that's when we decided, then in 2003, it was very important at successful salons in New York City that they were specialized. So this person did the haircut, this person did the brows, this person did the color, this person did the makeup, this person did the manicure, pedicure. And so we knew that we wanted to be specialized. And although I was a haircutting educator, I also had a really good grasp of hair color. Since Ted was the famous hairdresser, it made sense that I became the colorist. So I grew up my whole career in a salon every single day, and Ted, his career was really being on set every single day. So my role sort of became to, take the vision of what Ted has in his head and help dissect it down or filter the things out to make the dream come to reality, So I always say Ted comes up with the ideas and I make sure the checks don't
You
bounce.
execute it. Yeah. No, I mean, yeah. And so when did you decide you opened Starring, obviously, in LA, which it's a whole production. It feels very much like it's a whole experience in itself going there. Has it been difficult trying to run businesses and, like run a business and be able to find time for your relationship and your friendship and your life? How do you guys separate that? Does it ever get conflicted? And how do you take a step back and
I think it's
Focus on
really
yourself.
normal. We live together, we work together, we travel together, we hang out together. And so it's just kind of become, and it's interesting because my first salon that I worked at in Minneapolis was called the John English Salon. And John and his wife, Linda, ran the business together while I was building my career and my clientele in Minneapolis. And the whole time that I was in beauty school, I was a waiter at a restaurant, a Greek restaurant in Minneapolis called Christo's, that was owned by Gus and Carol, who were a married couple. And so I had mentorship on working with a
Couples.
spouse,
Yeah.
without even like realizing that that's a thing that I would do. And we're really good at, if we need time, to ask for it, So I think that it just feels really natural for us. So like when, COVID-19 and shelter in place all came into effect, there were so many couples that we're friends with that were like, oh my God, we're spending so much time together. But Ted and I, like, we'd always spent so much time together. So it was just kind of normal for us.
Normal. It was like
Yeah.
normal life. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, totally. Which obviously we're still kind of in the pandemic. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's so weird. Things are opening up, but then the spikes are going back up now. And it's who knows what part of the pandemic we're in. But when COVID-19 started to surface, did you immediately shut down the salon? How did you guys pivot? What are you doing now? And what are your reopening plans?
Well, Ted was really in tune with what was happening. I'm more of a skeptic. And I'm like, I'm not believing all this media hype. This seems really...
It's a conspiracy theory. I'm kidding.
Well, I'm not a conspiracist, but I believed that something was happening, but I didn't believe that it was going to be as big as it is. And as soon as, the shelter in place went into effect, is when we decided that we should close the salon. And, we have a house in Palm Springs that we rent out. And just, we're not big savers. We're more like, we talk about ourselves as like, there's two ways to go to Vegas. You can go to Vegas and sit at the nickel slots and have your free drinks and just play and play and play and play and play. But you're never really going to win big, but you're never going to really lose big either. Or you can go to Vegas and go to the high roller tables and throw your wad of cash down and bet it all. And if you win big. And if you lose, then you kind of lose big too. But that's sort of the way that we've lived our lives, is like our whole life is at the high roller table. So when we sold our apartment in Manhattan and we sold our house in upstate New York and moved to California, we bet the farm on the salon and the product. And when the shutdown happened, we literally had $2,800 in our checking account.
Holy fuck.
Totally. We had a commercial lease, a residential lease in LA, and a mortgage in Palm Springs. And our safety net has always been the house rental. So that ended too. We had $50,000 worth of cancellations on the house. So we were like, what are we going to do? But we moved to Palm Springs for the 3 months. And I think it was really great for us to be there. I'm kind of a silver linings guy. I'm an optimist. It was really great for Ted and I to be able to have that space and that beautiful, beautiful place to sort of collect and think about what we wanted to do, because it was a great moment for us to just reconfirm that we're on the same page. We decided, like, we will keep the salon and the product company going, but we're not going to let it kill us. So if it gets to a point where we have to shut it down, we'll shut it down.
And
So
that's a really hard, I've talked to a lot of people, and that everyone's kind of in that place where, like, we never even thought we would have to think those things, but here we are. And how do you, for both of you, a lot of times entrepreneurs or creatives are so attached to an idea or so attached to their business, and it will eventually kill them and they're not able to separate it. How were you able to be like, okay, this is the point, we draw the line, and you're able to detach yourself from that, even though you put so much of your livelihood into it?
That's a great question.
Coach.
Yeah, we do have a coach. And not only that we have a coach, but I also think that with life comes experience. And when you have a little bit of experience underneath your belt, and we have survived Hurricane Sandy, and we have,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? We have survived 3 other salons and a product line that was hugely successful, that was sold at Henry Bendel and every door of Saks Fifth Avenue, and over 100 doors of Sephora, and 1,000 doors of Target. You know, we've done a lot in our career over the last 20 years. And with that being said, with that experience, I've always lived my life as that everything is for my good. So if everything is for my good, then I have made the right decisions about everything in my life. So therefore, as Jason just said, if we did not have the means to take care of the salon and the product, then we would let it go. Because at the
And
end,
we don't look at failure as a setback. We look at failure as an opportunity to like recreate and to sort of learn from the things that worked and the things that didn't work. So we're not the kind of guys that something goes wrong and we fail, and then stop. We fail and then think of something else to do.
mm-hmm.
You know, and
I mean, if you ask Oprah how many things that she's worked on that didn't turn out the way that she thought it was going to be to the things that have, I'm sure it would make our head spin. It's probably way more things that didn't turn out the way that she wanted it to happen than the things that did. And I think that, you know, as Jason said, we have a coach. I think a coach is really important. Her name is Zan Ray. And if you look on Instagram at Elevate Your Business, you won't be sorry, but you have to be ready, because she will challenge you on everything that's going on in your life. So
yeah,
again,
I always say if you don't want to change, don't call Zan.
Don't call Zan. Well, I love what is both of you, what you said, and Ted, I love what you said. If it's not for my good, then it's not for my good, and it doesn't. For my good. Yeah. And the whole point of why I started the show was to hear these exact examples and real life examples from people who are seen as extremely successful, because a lot of times people don't get to see what's going on behind the curtains, and they just see like the highlight reel. So I really appreciate you sharing that. And so many people are going through it on different levels right now. So you guys are reopening the salon. How are things going to look now when you reopen? Are you taking any?
We're actually open 3 weeks today.
Oh, you
right?
you did? Okay.
2 weeks today?
2 weeks.
2 weeks today.
2 weeks yesterday.
I didn't know that. Okay.
2 weeks yesterday, Wednesday.
Yeah.
Okay, so how are things different?
Well, you know, when we decided that we were going to open Starring by Ted Gibson on La Brea, we took a good year and a half to think about the things that we loved about the salon business and the things that we less than loved about the salon business. So as small business owners, we less than love the relationship that salons have to have with product manufacturers and the burden that is. You know, for example, to be a Kerastase salon, there's an $18,000 opening order and then a commitment to a couple $1,000 a month in reorder. So you've got $20,000 worth of inventory sitting on your shelf waiting for you can't move. Yeah. Exactly.
And that's not including hair color. So you have to have hair color in order to color
another 10,000 or 15,000.
Yeah.
So we wanted to change that. We didn't love the overhead of a lot of front desk staff. We didn't love the overhead of training and hiring and training assistants to get them ready to go onto the floor. Like each assistant cost us about $25,000 to train them and put them on the floor. And so we thought, you know, we're going to we hated the chair next to the chair, next to the chair, next to the chair with like checking in, then there's a coat check, and then there's a housekeeper, and there's a shampoo person, and then there's a hair cutter, and then there's a colorist, and then there's someone else that does your blow dry. And we thought we wanted to just be simple. So we got rid of the front desk. We got rid of the assistants. We put everything on an app. The front door and the back door are secure, so you can't come in unless you have an appointment. There's one point of contact, and that's your hairdresser, because your hairdresser can do your haircut, can do your hair color, can do your makeup. And we created these individual clouds that the chairs are stationed 8.5 feet apart from each other in a semi-private little room. So we really, without knowing it, built literally the salon of the future.
Right.
Totally. not just because of all the technology, because everything is powered by Amazon and Alexa, and great technology from ADT. And, so it's all very tech savvy, but it's also by default, I guess, become very COVID safe as well. So while we were looking at the opening, we started talking about it as not reopening our previous business, but opening a brand new business, because we needed to look at every single step from the second she books her appointment till she gets to the front door, how she's greeted at the front door, how she's escorted to the salon chair to change into her robe, to the shampoo, like with all of these new procedures put in place. So we wanted to put a whole new lens on it when we were looking at it. So that's when we started talking about opening a new business, not reopening our old business. And it's been amazing. Every single client that has come in has been delightful. There's not been one single question about wearing a mask. There's not been one single question. We did a 20% price increase because we had to reduce our capacity dramatically. We had to invest in sanitation, which takes an extra 15 or 20 minutes per client. So the cost of goods went up, so the price has to go up. We've not had one client even question the price increase. So for salon owners and hairdressers out there, like, I think it's really important to evaluate the way that you've had to increase time per client and spend the money on PPE and sanitation and things like that, and have that reflected in your pricing. Because, if she did not value her salon experience or her hairdresser in February, she's absolutely valuing it in June.
Yep. For sure.
And I know so many women they don't care at this point. They're like, I'll give you my child, just fix my hair. I'm kidding, but.
Well, and 20% for us is, I think it was $30.
Yeah.
So $30 every 6 weeks is like 2 cocktails.
Right.
So like when you think about, it that way, it's not that big of a deal.
So how do you think, though, you guys are clearly ahead of the curve. How do you think the industry as a whole is going to change? And plus, you both have been educators in beauty and fashion, beauty school before. How is that going to change? Because I can't imagine they're going to be able to resume IRL, like in real life, at that capacity, at the same capacity. And you can't really cut hair virtually. I mean, you can, but it's not the same.
Well, we've done a lot of thinking about that during the shutdown too. The only press that the beauty industry has received throughout the whole COVID-19 experience has been pretty negative.
Yeah.
It's like these 2 hairdressers go back to work
In Missouri,
and infect all these people or expose all of these people, or the same thing at a barbershop not that long ago. And so the press hasn't been really positive. Even our own governor in California said over and over and over, this started at a nail salon in California, where the food and beverage industry has had the exact opposite press and exposure through this whole experience. And that made Ted and I really think about, why don't we have a unified voice? Why don't we have a way for our industry to project the great positive image that we really are? And so we got together with another couple in New York City, Allison and Shannon King, and had a conversation that led to the organization of the Worth Up Foundation. And the Worth Up Foundation is a place for, right now we're focusing on hairdressers because that's who we are, but we want it to grow into all different aspects of beauty. A place for them to go for mentorship, for help in whatever kind of business that they need. We have a board of 28 ambassadors who are already product manufacturers or product developers, salon owners, global educators. So let's say you're a salon employee, but you feel you're in a place where you want to open your own business. There's not a lot of resources for.
No, it's kind of like the wild, wild west.
Totally. So we want to be that resource. We want to be able to have mentors that can help you define what your brand is. How do you separate yourself from the salons, like the rest of the salons in your town? How do you do a business plan? How do you hire? How do you promote your business? How do you look for capital? how do you do all of the things that you need to do to set yourself up for success?
Like beauty business school.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
We want to be that resource for our industry so that we can mentor this next generation of entrepreneurs to be successful. And with that, have a unified voice. So when there is a circumstance that we need to have that voice be heard, we will have the voice to be heard.
Yeah.
Did I say that
Clapping.
okay, honey?
Yeah, you
Thank
did
you.
such a good job.
Thank you.
He's clapping very, very loudly for you. And how do people sign up for this? Or do they have to apply, and do they go through interviews, or is it anyone?
That's a
at
great
this point?
question because
Yeah.
it's brand new. We just launched it this last weekend. We have partnered with a woman named Linnell Lynch, who has an organization called Beauty Changes Lives that creates scholarships for people that want to go to beauty school but can't afford it. I don't know. Most people don't know that most beauty schools don't have a loan process.
Right.
Like you can't get a student loan because most of them aren't accredited in the way that schools need to be to qualify for that.
And it's like $25,000 or more to go to beauty school for 9 months.
Yeah, it's expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So she's created this foundation, Beauty Changes Lives, and we are under her umbrella. So we could come with our idea, and she said, this is amazing. You can be under my umbrella because I'm already set up as a 501c3, and I will help you with all the things that we need to do. So we're in discussions with her about the steps that we need to put into place. And we've been already receiving emails from people at info@worthupfoundation.com to find out how they can be involved or how they can take advantage of our offerings. And so right now, our response is going to be to put it back onto the person that needs help and say, what kind of help do you need? So that we can start putting together the curriculum or the webinars or the whatever, so that we can provide those needs instead of us trying to come up with what do people need.
Right,
You know
because right now, especially, everyone's at a different place, and
Yes.
it's not a one size fits all situation.
Yes.
Yeah, because you have people that aren't open yet. You have people that are open, people that are still struggling, people that don't know how they're going to pay their rent. There's so many different nuances that I think that what we're really, really proud of this organization, the Worth Up Foundation, is because it's going to be like nothing else in the beauty industry. You know, we have the Professional Beauty Association, which is great, but what they provide is going to be a lot different than what we're going to be able to provide. And our focus is really, really, really to be a resource for hairdressers for the beginning, and then everyone else from barbers to cosmetologists, of course, to nail techs, manicurists and pedicurists and estheticians, and everyone who has anything, brow specialists and lash girl, you know, everything.
Yeah, the whole 9 yards.
Help them to have resources for the business. Because if we don't do it, then, you know, I think that there has to be something that has to happen for the next generation of people in the beauty business.
Yeah, and I think the pandemic has definitely shown all the flaws or the structural flaws behind the beauty business, like you guys mentioned.
And, you know, since the day we opened our first doors on Fifth Avenue in December 2003, we educated everyone on our team to be able to do all textures of hair. So there was never a person that came into that salon that we had to say, I'm sorry,
turn away, or we don't know. Yeah.
We don't know how to do your hair. And so we've been really focused on inclusivity and diversity from the beginning. And I think that the Worth Up Foundation is just the next level. You know, most people in the salon industry are women. And I believe that that's why it's so difficult for us to get funding. And that's why it's so difficult for us to get healthcare. That's why it's so difficult for us to get all kinds of things, because, you know, it's women and minorities generally that are working in these shops.
I mean, I just did an episode about this, but like about how to fix, you know, if we really want to fix economies of scale, you have to hire or wire. Like hire women and minorities and people of color, Black people, all that, or wire them, fund them, fund businesses. And only,
I love that,
I think 4% of venture dollars went to women, and out of that 4%, I think 0.6% went to Black women. So that's frightening. It's like,
I'm just writing that down because that is effing brilliant.
Yeah.
I will send you the stats if you guys
Yeah,
I
would
think I
love
saw a
to.
stat that said that
Yeah.
81% of
Mhm.
investment groups,
Yeah.
81% of investment groups had zero investments in Black-owned businesses.
Yep.
Yeah, it's actually like very frightening.
Yeah.
And it's also like, I guess we can transition now because it's like all these businesses or brands are saying, you know, posting the Black Lives Matter quotes, or they did the blackout square for Blackout Tuesday, or they're saying apologizing now only because they're being called out.
Sure.
And, you know, even though it's if that's what it's going to take, that's what it's going to take.
Mhm.
But Ted, you had to work twice as hard. You had to perfect all, you know, hair textures. And it
Yeah.
seems like, you know, after we've been talking, you've instilled that in anyone that you've educated
Mhm.
and been around.
Mhm.
But have you had to, you know, versus your white colleagues probably who only had to master white hair and they didn't have
Mhm.
to learn textured hair, or maybe
Mhm.
I can imagine that you got put on jobs because they thought, oh, he can do that job because
Mhm.
he's Black, he can work
Sure.
with Black girls' hair.
Sure. Sure.
Have you had to, you know, what other kinds, or have you had to face any other racial injustices in your career in the fashion and beauty industry?
Well, I think that, yes, you're 100% right, but I would say that it's been more than just two times what my white counterparts have had to do. You know, I have the most expensive haircut in the nation at $2,400. I have worked on some of the most incredible women in the world. I have done fashion shows all over the world. Was on a show, What Not to Wear. I've had a successful product line. I have done editorial for all the major magazines and publications. And my white counterparts haven't done but maybe two of those things. And
Maybe.
um,
Most of them know how to do a beach wave.
yeah, that's what it is. But you know, for me, I know that it's been part of my fight my entire career, that I've always thought about how I need to be better and how I have to be better than this person and that person and this person and that person because of the color of my skin and because I'm gay. Like, you know, if someone normally that doesn't know who Ted Gibson is, they probably think as a hairdresser that I am 5'8", 155 pounds, and I have an English accent. And then when I show up, then they're like, oh, no, he's not that. Nope, I'm not. There have been many, you know, times where, you know, people have thought that I was the bodyguard and not the hairdresser. Yeah.
Wow.
So I know that it's been a part of my struggle. And the thing that I would say is that I have really pushed through that, you know, especially the last few weeks. I've been, you know, thinking about my career and thinking about who I am as a person, and, you know, the times where I felt like that I should have spoken up and I didn't speak up, or the times where I should have said something and I didn't. You know, I do feel bad about those times. And at the same time, I know the reason why I did it. I did it because if I would have made waves, then I possibly wouldn't be where I am today. But today is another day, and what I'm really focused on is that the next generation of hairdressers really have to understand that I'm doing it for them. And I know all of the things and the people that did it for me in order for me to be who I am today in this business. And it's still not enough. You know, it's still not enough. So what I'm hoping is the things that Jason and I have done and are doing will help to raise that awareness so that, again, the next generation hairdresser will have to not have to work as hard to get the recognition that they deserve and want, and that's their God-given right.
And interestingly enough, I know a lot of brands now are probably reaching out to, or they are reaching out to a lot of Black creators or individuals, trying to include them in their campaigns now or on the Instagram or do
Mhm.
things like that. I only know this because I saw it on your Instagram, Jason. And you called Fakai out. Fakai reached out to you, Ted, directly on your DMs. And
Mhm.
why did, Jason, you feel like you needed to speak up about this?
because I
publicly.
think it's gross. um, you know, there's a difference between, I'll do an example. So the New London Pharmacy in New York carries Starring by Ted Gibson, and they've had Ted at their store to do events. They've promoted the product, and they did a really beautiful shout out to Ted as a partner of theirs on their Instagram story, on their Instagram feed, and it was fantastic. And that is a great way for a company to do it. Like, amplify the relationships that you have and glorify them. The approach that the Fakai company was taking was realizing that they're the whitest brand in America,
Right.
and that was not cool right now, and finding people that they could put on their Instagram to make people believe that they're diverse when they aren't, or that they appreciate diversity when they don't. And I saw Ted put it on his Instagram story without naming anyone, and that made me mad. I was like, these people need to be named. Like, I expect out of my relationships, if I'm doing something that is inappropriate, if I'm doing something that's offensive, if I'm doing something that is out of character, that my friends, my peers, my professional relationships will hold me accountable to that. And so for me, you know, I got some pushback about shaming. For me, it's not. I did say shame on you, but it's not about shaming. It's about holding people accountable to who you really are. Like, it would have been much more admirable to say, we are the problem. We have ignored a large part of the consumer population. We are going to make a change. And the way that we're making that change is we're going to hire some people of color. We're going to include people of color in our advertising. We're going to look to people of color for feedback on our products. Like, that's the way to do it, not to exploit someone's image who's worked his entire career to be where he is and then glean something off of that for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Right,
And
because there was no action behind it. It was just kind of
None.
like a
Not at
trend.
all.
Oh, you're trending right now, so let me put you
Yes.
up.
It's
Exactly.
like, this might be wrong. I believe it's Chanel put together a diversity panel. Okay. Well,
It's Chanel.
Yeah, it is Chanel.
Mhm.
You don't need a diversity panel if you hire diversely. First of all, like, you don't need a panel to tell you how
If it's
to.
diverse enough, right?
Yeah,
the
all you have to do is
logic.
hire somebody, and then with that diversity panel, the person that was the head of the panel is a white person.
Yeah, that is where you just scratch your head and like just stop. Like, don't just there's no point of that.
Yeah, it
Right.
just doesn't make sense. You know,
Yeah.
I think that this is the important conversation that people need to have. And it starts with people like me who can skate through life without being noticed,
Mhm.
to pay attention to those things that come up, those racist things, no matter what we mask them as. If we mask them as stereotypes, if we mask them as generalizations, if we mask them as whatever it is, to catch ourselves having that feeling and then have a conversation with ourselves about, where is that coming from? What is the truth? What do I know is the truth? And then to have those conversations. You know, I'm lucky because I am surrounded by all different kinds of people all of the time. It's just the way that I've built my life. And I'm lucky because I can have those conversations with my mom and my dad and my niece and my nephews and my sister and her husband. And we can have these conversations about race and about why do we feel the way that we feel when we've been raised in a liberal family with like great values, but those emotions, for some reason, those things still pop up. And it's really easy for us, especially in homogenized communities, to just sweep it aside and say, the racism isn't a problem for me. I'm not racist.
I mean, when someone says that I'm not racist, I'm like, that's the first clue. That's the first clue, because I don't know that you have defined what racism is. I'm racist. I admit it. I admit it. And I try to make sure that I work on my own racism. And that's what I encourage everyone to do. Because when you say that you're not racist and that you don't see color is bullshit, because you see color. How could you not see color? That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah. And then there's also within different communities, there's colorism.
Sure.
You know, I'm Egyptian,
course.
and in Egypt, that's such a big thing because,
Of course.
you know, it sparked up, this movement has sparked up globally these conversations
Yes.
and all different kinds of cultures and nationalities and backgrounds.
Absolutely.
But I also want to touch on how you were able to come and meet in the middle with Backe. It seems like you announced that you're going to do an IG live with them or something like that. How did you come to a mutual kind of amicable way to work together instead of totally like canceling each other out?
Well, I know that we have a good friend of ours, 20-something year relationship with someone that works at Backe. And when we sent him this post, he was horrified and said something to Backe, Frederic, and said something to the PR director and blah, 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 person that handles their social, and said, I can't believe this. This is the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. Why in the world would you do that? So Frederic sent me an email, personally, and I answered the email back and said that, I'm so glad that you sent me the email. I really appreciate it that you have decided to do something about this. This is great. And what I would like for you to do is to make sure that you honor the things that you say you're going to do, is by having diversity and have inclusion in your executive as well as your stylist in the salon. Just to making sure that you honor those things. And then also at the same time, if you could, it would really make a big difference for me if you would donate a significant amount of money to either of these two organizations. And he said that he would donate $10,000 to the Equal Justice Initiative. So for me, that says a lot about his character. And then we had a Zoom call last week. So, and just had some dialogue that I think the important thing about healing is admitting it and discovering what it is that you can do and then moving on.
And for other Black creatives or entrepreneurs or individuals who are being approached by brands like this, how you just gave a great example how you were able to find a way to help heal that brand or heal and help them move forward. Should everyone do that, or is it case by case basis?
I think it's case by case basis. I do believe that if someone else had reached out to me that way, I don't know what I would have done. Like, I do think it's a case by case basis, because you can't, I think in my opinion, you can't put something that happened with one person and do the same exact thing to another, because there may be nuances that were completely different. In this instance, I felt like it was important. And I thought about it for a while. Okay, so what is it that some action around it? Because if there's no action, if we just complain and complain and complain, then there's no action, just like how there is with the riots and the protest and, the looting. All of that stuff created a reaction. And we're seeing what's happening because of that. We're seeing the results from that, because as everyone is saying, it's kind of like the perfect storm. If everyone was still working and still on their own shit, that over the last 3 months of staying home and COVID and all these things, it probably would have been different. So it was perfect that, thank you, COVID, for being around, because what it did, all those people people that have lost their lives for this, I'm truly honored that this happened, because if it wasn't for COVID, we wouldn't have had this kind of experience.
Yeah, and like you said, people probably wouldn't have had the time. They would be up in their own bullshit instead of being able to focus on or really learn or hear or listen.
Yeah, or listen or even see, because everyone cannot. I mean, everyone around the world saw that video. Like, people have heard about police brutality. We all saw the Rodney King video from a distance. You know, we saw Mr. Arbery getting killed by those three white dudes in Georgia. But we did not see anything like Mr. Floyd's death.
And did it hit you guys even harder because you're from Minnesota and like you guys lived in Minneapolis? Did it hit
Yes.
even harder
For
for
me,
you
it
guys?
did.
Yeah.
For
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely.
Because, I always take a lot of pride in being from Minnesota. It's always been a blue state. My dad was a teacher. My mom sold insurance, like all American kind of jobs. And I guess I didn't believe that it could happen in Minnesota, and I think that the big eye opener for everyone is that it can happen in your backyard. It can happen anywhere. I think that, like Ted said, I think it was the perfect storm for all of this to kind of come to a head and for people to demand to be heard. I'm getting in a lot of, I have to stay off Facebook because
don't even get me started. My Facebook, like I have most of my Midwest people still on Facebook and it's just, I'm like, what? Like my eyes, like
Crazy.
I have to go read. I'm like my sister, I'm like, can you believe what this person just like posted? Like, this is insane.
Yeah.
It's remarkable.
It's really remarkable.
It is.
So there's been all of this discussion about, the rioting and the looting, and my biggest pet peeve right now are all of these people that are throwing up MLK quotes and sort of like painting this picture that's like a fairy tale of Martin Luther King and his peaceful protesting. And I just have to remind people over and over, I'm like, that's not a fairy tale with a happy ending. He was hated to the point that he was executed publicly.
Yeah.
Like, there's some great quotes in there for sure.
Yeah.
But please don't use that for your banner of I'm not a racist, because a couple of MLK quotes.
Yeah, the other
Remember
one
the end to that story.
Yeah, the All Lives Matter situation.
Oh my God.
That's another one I'm heated up about. And it's it's just, it's COVID and this mixed together, It's fun times on Facebook. So
yeah.
And it's really funny because like all of a sudden I'm labeled as a radical liberal leftist
cupcake. Don't forget the cupcake.
Every time someone calls me a cupcake, I want to punch them in the face. Like,
what flavor of cupcake would you be? I'm kidding. That was a joke.
Whoop ass.
Whoop ass.
Cupcake whoop. Rocky Road for sure, honey.
Well, obviously the beauty industry right now, whether it be nail, hair, makeup, tied into the fashion industry, all of that, I feel like we're sitting at a pivotal point where we're about to see a revolution, or like in between the pandemic and the Black Lives Matter movement.
Yep. And
you guys are already paving the way for change. But from a macro point or standpoint, what else needs to happen? What needs to change in the industry?
Well, Ted and I have talked about this a couple of times because, in addition to this today, we had a call before this interview and we have a call after that are both with companies that want to do licensing or want to distribute our product, which, maybe it's coincidence that people are looking for Black owned brands to support right now. Maybe it's not, I don't know.
I don't think it is. I think people are consciously now looking for and trying and looking internally like, oh, we're not supporting Black brands. Where can I find that?
And that would be my advice to entrepreneurs of color, Black entrepreneurs, or any gay entrepreneurs, any oppressed community entrepreneur. This is the time to really start, if you're not getting approached, start reaching out to people. And one of the first questions that I asked this company that we talked with this morning was like, what does your portfolio look like as far as diversity is concerned? I said, this is a great opportunity to put your money where your mouth is and show that you're committed to diversity, by finding these brands and working with them.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important for entrepreneurs to approach the people that make the decisions and say, hey, listen, I'm willing to work with you to give you the great halo effect of being inclusive. you know, and use it to your advantage instead of, I think it's easy to jump on the bandwagon of having a voice with no action behind it. So use your voice and create the action for yourself. Because if not now, when? Like, this is the opportunity.
And does it bother you guys at all if you're like the token Black brand in the portfolio? Or are you, if that's what it takes, are you okay with it?
Well, I think that where there's one, there will be many.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't think that it would be token at all.
I think we look at it as being maybe the first and opening the door to the many.
Yeah. And I think a lot of brands or bigger companies have never really experienced working maybe with a Black brand or founder. And so you're, like you said, like you're kind of leading the way, teaching them, opening their eyes to a whole new world. And
that's who Ted is. Like Ted, both of us, we're teachers. We love to share information. We love to enlighten people. We love to help people grow. And so, you know, as we're building our own business, we're looking for partners that want to grow in this direction with us.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I'm so excited to see where you guys go, and really excited to see how the Worth Up Foundation evolves. Where can people connect with you, find you guys, and where can they find the Worth Up Foundation?
For Worth Up, they can send an email to info@worthupfoundation.com. Okay. There's also a Worth Up Foundation Facebook page, Instagram page, and website. My Instagram is @JasonBacke, B-A-C-K-E. And I'm really engaging on social media, so it's easy to get in touch with me there. And Ted?
Mine is @Ted Gibson with the B-S-O-N. And then @Starring is our brand. The salon is on La Brea between 2nd and 3rd. And Shooting Star Texture Meringue, which is a product that I designed because I wanted to be able to use it on multi-textures of hair. It's in between a foam and a mousse. And it's really, really, really fantastic. It smells like fig and coconut and amber, and it's really beautiful and sexy. And at the same time, I love it. So I just want to thank you very, very much for having us today.
Oh my God, thank you. I could keep going, honestly. We'll have to come back, and
Would love
you'll
it.
have to come back on the show. And